Um, well, thanks for hopping over from the other call and doing this right now with no planning or no pre heads up that we're going to do this.
Yeah, what's the expression? We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. Yeah, exactly. Just finished a day of testing, so that's been going well. Are you training or just getting ready to train?
Yeah, I did some training this morning, and then I had a bunch of phone calls here, and then yeah, I'll be training again here now. Yeah, once we're off the
Do you
call.
tip, do you typically break it up into two halves, or do you do it all at once?
Yeah, very much two halves. It's been like that for quite a while. Yeah, I mean, really, the past like 5 or 6 years, I'd say 5 years. Yeah.
Tell me about what about ever doing, call it three sessions, like something big break, something big break, something.
Yeah, I'll do that. Sometimes like kind of as like call it like 3 weeks or 2 weeks out from the games. I'll sometimes do that for a couple of days, and then those individual sessions, let's say I'll go in here and I'll just do like a singular really hard workout, or maybe like two strength pieces, and then have some food, and then maybe I'll drive somewhere and do some outdoor something, and just like, all right, you're gonna hit this really hard, you're gonna run up that hill, do something, run down, pick up the sandbag, and then pull it all back in your car. So kind of like have like a day out and about, and it's a good way to get some odd stuff going, and then kind of simulate a bit of that like hurry up and wait of the games, stop and
Yeah,
starts. Yeah.
exactly. Do you think people are overtraining in the space at this level that are going to the games?
So I'll say this. I think there were two athletes or three athletes I've been speaking with that are rookies. I think two. And I jumped on a call with one of them and gave them some advice about, well, what's the games like? And what I said to both of them is like, you're very fit. You made it to the games. You don't
Yeah,
have to I think there's this fascination, like, oh, games training, like, let's get it. And then you
yeah.
just try and kill yourself every day for 6 weeks. And I'm like, you're fine. It's not like, it is harder than semis without a doubt. But like, semis, we did 3 workouts on Sunday. Like, they were fine. They made it. Right. So you don't have to like all of a sudden ramp up your training by like double it, because it's not a good idea. So I think some people overtrain, some people don't. It's all relative to experience, and there's a million factors, but it is a suggestion I give to a lot of rookies is like, don't reinvent the wheel. Whatever you're doing is working. You don't need to all of a sudden train like an exorbitant amount more. Yeah.
Especially with the intensity, but maybe with the technique of some new things that you might be preparing for, it's probably a good idea, right? So, like, if you qualify for the games, and let's just take, for example, swimming,
Yeah.
and like you don't have solid technique or background, like someone like you, working on that probably is a good idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously at the games, there's certain things that are, like you're less likely to do a pegboard at semifinals just from a logistics standpoint of getting 10 per, one per lane, or swimming's an obvious example, or some of the odd object stuff like a yoke maybe. Although we have seen those at semis and sanctionals, but so yeah, I think like there is, and that's what I think tempting about our sport is there are so many things. I've got a list of movements and it's upwards of 200. And it's like, do you practice all of those things once a week, twice a week, once a month, once a year? And some of those things I do like once a year, right? I swim more than once a year, but so yeah, I think so for those athletes, if all of a sudden that list went from 100 to 200, I'm a games athlete. If they're trying to now all of a sudden practice all those things like hopping on a road bike, if they're doing all of that at a really high intensity along with chest bars and thrusters, then yeah, they could be in a tough spot by the time the games rolls around.
List of 200 movements you said you have?
Yeah, I mean, give or take, yeah.
I think this is where you and I disagree. I think you guys are looking for a little more standardization of standards for movements. Where I think having a little, I actually think so. Let's take ground to shoulder with the sandbag. One expression or one way to judge it is just to get to the shoulder, right? And then
Yeah.
come down. The other way clearly is to go over the shoulder. I think as long as the standard is clear prior to doing the event, having some variety across events or competitions is actually okay. Is it a true statement that that we disagree on that?
Well, I think
Or what
maybe not
example
as
would
much.
you use?
I suppose not as much as you'd think. I would say for something like a sandbag, for example, I think my thought there would be like, let's find a standard or multiple standards that have like the least amount of gray area that are
Yeah,
going to cause issues with judging that are unnecessary. And so for some movements, you might say, sandbag clean, judging standard, A, B, C, D. If there's four that we whoever that is deems are like good. And so for me, like when I list those tuner movements, that's like I'm aware that no matter how many movements I guess, I'm going to go to a competition and they're going to make me do like, oh, I haven't done that one yet. Right. But it's like, there's whatever, 20 things that we do with a barbell, and you can basically do those 20 things with one dumbbell, and you can do them with two dumbbells. You could do them with one dumbbell and one kettlebell. And so I guess when it comes to movement standardization, I think maybe where we differ a bit is like, I guess I don't desire the movement standardization to bring clarity to my training. It's more so, I guess from my experience going to different comps, whether it's the CrossFit Games or, some backyard brawl, a lot of times they'll create a standard for, let's say it's a sandbag clean, and I'll go like, oh man, like there's a better one. And I've
Well,
used
I
it
agree
this long.
there. Yeah. I definitely, and the gray area part too, like we definitely want to cut out gray area as much as possible with all movements for sure.
Yeah. So I think it's not coming from a place of like trying to get rid of like the excitement or the unknown, or especially not challenging athletes in new ways. Cause those are some of my favorite memories, is having to push the snail, or, if we went to some comp and they said, hey, there's two sandbags, you have to get them both, one on each shoulder, like figure it out. I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. Right.
Yeah. It's a good idea. Let me write that down.
Yeah, I know. I just thought of that. I don't know. But yeah. And so I guess for the movements that keep coming up, that's kind of, I guess that would be my way of putting it, is like, hey, the movements that we like are always having, like when I go to a brief and they brief the toes to bar and they spend 60, 70 seconds explaining the toes to bar, I'm just like, can we just not, like we know what works, let's just use it. And then, so for some of these movements, like a sandbag clean, where, we've done them now it's been over a decade, it'd be nice to be like, all right, unless we think of something better, like this is option A and B, and like let's just use these, unless there's something better for a very specific reason, in which case go nuts, right? If it's
the problem though isn't you, because of all your experience. So it's they're talking to the people who are brand new, who kind of need that extra discussion and that extra clarity on some of that. So we have to default to the lowest common denominator, not to someone of your level necessarily.
Yeah.
And on that, I'll say, how many years have you been to the games now?
So this will be my 9th games, and before that I think it was 3 regionals where I didn't qualify. So this is like my 12th year.
Well, I remember the regional for like 3 years in a row. You just barely missed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that phase, because you were, and I think overhead squats in Vancouver got you at one event, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was the first time.
It's crazy that I remember that about you.
The first time we met is you were in Vancouver, and I finished, I think it's my first Instagram post too. I finished the 50s chipper. So it was the 50 cal row, 50 box jump, 50 deadlift, come back. And I won the workout and I set the event record. And I think, you were in the little announcer's tent or something, and you gave me a fist bump like, oh, good job. And you said, oh, that's the event record. And I said, oh, for now, I don't, someone else will beat it. And you said, I don't know. And you kind of went like, I don't know. And it turns out nobody did.
Yeah.
So I think
awesome.
two more weeks, you were like, not so sure about that. And you probably had maybe a better understanding of based on some testing or something. I was maybe too humble.
And that was one of those events that not many people finished that year, right?
Yeah,
like a handful. Yeah.
It's like
the after all these years of qualifying and training, right now at this stage, how broken are you?
Oh, not at all, really. No.
And that's awesome to hear, because I think we've talked about this before, but I think there's this misconception that to be in it this long, or to be at this level, and again for this duration, you guys are all just completely broken and walking around, barely hanging on. But it sounds like you're good. Tell me why.
Yeah. It's not like I'm hanging on by knee sleeves and duct tape. I use knee sleeves less than I used to, actually. But I mean, for me, like I think technique is always like a really big priority, and just I'm like constantly trying to learn. I'm watching little YouTube videos. I've been working more with a Jeremy Meredith, who's a CrossFit affiliate owner, CrossFit Vernon, and he really knows his stuff. He's got like books on movement patterns and stuff. And so I'm just like always just trying to kind of like mold my, this year I've worked a lot on my upper back strength, which I think has just helped in even my handstand push-ups and keeping my shoulders healthier when I press upside down. And so that's one thing, is definitely like movement efficiency and technique. And then the other thing is sort of like, I don't do, I'm trying to think of like an example. Like I do a lot of strict pull-ups, leading up to a comp, I'll do a lot more kipping chest to bars. And, same thing with like kipping handstand push-ups. I'll do a lot of like tempo handstand push-ups throughout the year, maybe strict or like, dumbbell pressing or whatever that is, and handstand holds. And then leading up to a comp, it's like, all right, you're going to do kipping. And so not that I think those movements are like inherently dangerous, but I think that with the speed that I can do them at and the number of reps that I can do and the number I have to do to kind of get a stimulus, it's like, all right, I got to do a workout with 50 to 150 chest to bars. And if you're doing that a lot, it's like, or you could be doing, ski ergs and strict pull-ups and kind of get like a similar response. So just like kind of figuring out what's worked for me and not being afraid to like try things a little differently. And then obviously technique is a big part of it.
If people want to find out more about what you're doing, don't you have a program? What's it called?
Yeah, so I have the Professor Project, which is like basically train like I do. Train your weakness, which is like you want to get your first bar muscle up with some progressions and stuff. Which that's been a lot of fun. Every event I go to, someone's like, "Hey, I got my first bar muscle up because your program." I'm like, oh,
awesome.
But yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, any questions for me?
Oh man, no. I mean, I'm not going to put you in some situation where you're not going to answer something anyway. But
I'm good at that.
What's that?
I'm good at hearing questions and not answering them anyways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's my question. Do you ever have athletes reaching out to you or reaching out to the demo team, like trying to get like the goods and trying to get secret stuff that they shouldn't be able to get?
To me, no.
Yeah.
To demo team or to people, yes. That's why like the testing athletes try to keep them out of the limelight right now. In years past, we've had issues with that. But but not to me. Nobody's trying to mine me for any info.
Yeah, they know. Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Okay, so after this, if I send you a text and say, "Hey, Dave, how much?" You're not gonna.
Yeah.
Maybe no one's tried. Maybe that's why.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Brent. Well, that was it in trying to keep these short. I'm going to end it now and appreciate the time you gave me.
Take it easy, Dave. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.